Welcome. As you know, we are in the second week of our fast. We are processing through, asking the Lord for a shift. And this week, we're talking primarily about a shift in our mind, in the way that we think and the way that we see things. Lord, shift our mindset as well as our mind. And the scripture that I wanted to share with you that goes along with this is found in Romans 12. And even as we skip to verse 2, this is what it says. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. The thing that I want to first say to you is that shift and transformation to shift the way we think is a process, guys. I don't want any of us to feel like we have to drastically shift today. There's nothing usually good that happens through that kind of drastic shifting. The only time that that's something that's a healthy thing is when the Lord does it, and He does it usually miraculously, and let me tell you, graciously. That grace that is needed from the Lord to change or to shift that strongly in such a short period of time, it has to be the Lord. So what I hear the Lord saying to me is, God has made us into a new person. And it is something that needs to happen in us. We need to allow ourselves to be transformed into that new person, and also the changing of the way we think, the transformation or the shifting of our mind in the way that we think. Then, when that happens, we will be able to learn God's will for us, His plan for us. I'll tell you, I hear a lot, and I know that you've probably even processed a lot. Lord, what are you doing? What's going on? And what is the point of me being in the middle of this or walking through this? Listen, we can't understand God's perfect will for us, His plan for our lives, if we're thinking the way we used to think. We have to think the way He thinks. We have to have a mindset that is His mindset. And so that will only happen through a transformation, a shifting of our mindset. Now, I want you to hear what it says here. It says, then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Good and pleasing and perfect. This is something that really leads us into some really great questions that we should ask ourselves, and that possibly even as groups of people, small groups or life groups, we could ask these questions and then meditate on what the Lord would say. Hear what He says to us. What the scripture says is once our mindset has been shifted, we'll be able to learn and to know God's will for us, which we can trust is good and is pleasing and is perfect. And so I want you to think about this idea of good. You know, the first thing I think is, well, good for who? Is it good for you? Is it good for me? Is it good for others? Is it good for everybody? Or good for who? Obviously, what we need to understand and ask the Lord is, Lord, only good things come from you. You are good. So the good things I see in my life are for me, but they're also through me. They're for me, but to be used through me for others as well. And so that good is one of those primary questions that we'd ask. Lord, what are some good things you are wanting to work in my life in the middle of this stuff, in the middle of everything that's going on in our world? What do you want me to do that's good? I'll tell you, the answer is probably a lot closer to home than you might think. The answer is probably a lot simpler, a lot smaller than you might think. But until we ask those questions and allow the Lord to speak to us, we're not going to find the answers. So the first thing I want you to process is, in the middle of this time and in the middle of asking the Lord for a shift in our mindset, start to ask Him to reevaluate what good looks like in your life. What does good look like? In my neighborhood, in my life, in my family, at my workplace, with my finances? Lord, will you work a good purpose in my life? And will you show me what that is? Will you transform my mind so I can learn the purpose of it? The second thing that we see is this, that it would be pleasing. Pleasing. Now, listen, again, that same kind of thought applies to it. Is it pleasing to the Lord? Of course it is. Of course it is. And that's primarily who it's pleasing to. But is it going to be pleasing to you? Yes. Yes. Are there things in your life that are pleasing but difficult? Are there things in your life that are pleasing but costly? Are there things in your life that are pleasing yet still require patience? And so the thought process that we have to start with, and the second question that I'd say we ask is this: Lord, will you help shift in my own mind what I find to be pleasing? Will you help me to find pleasure in the things that you find pleasure in? And if there are things in my life that I find pleasure in that don't honor you, or aren't good, or aren't part of your purpose, will you show them to me so I can remove them? Now, the third thing is this, and this is all in that scripture, Romans 12, verse 2. It's everything that is instructed to us about the transformation of our mind and the shifting of our mindset. And the third thing is this: it's perfect. Now, that perfect isn't referring to you are going to be a perfect person. That's not going to happen anytime soon. That won't happen until the fullness of the work of Christ is completed in our life. And we have hope in that, and we trust in that, but that's not a current reality in my physical life. It may be a reality in my spiritual self, but it's not. I still mess up. If you didn't know that, I still make mistakes, right? And so because I make mistakes, I'm not perfect yet. But what is this perfect referring to? Is it referring to the need God has for perfect people to be part of his plan? No, of course not. That's not it at all. And let's not be a people who take that standard of perfection and carry it like it's a heavy weight. Because I don't want to carry that. I don't want that nonsense. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Let's be okay with that. The perfect is about the will of God. The perfect is about the plan God has for you. That's the perfect, right? And so when we think about how this works, that perfect is going to be about the way that God is going to use the good, the bad, the hard, the easy, the struggle stuff, the trial stuff, the political stuff, the COVID stuff, the finance stuff, all of it to come to a place where his perfect will is accomplished in our lives. And so the third question that we would come to is this: Lord, will you show me how your perfect will can be accomplished through my vulnerability, through my sharing my testimony, through my generosity, through my gratitude? Will you show me how your perfect will is worked for those who have a right heart after you and who are willing to allow you to use their lives in such a way that it glorifies you and it honors you and it brings people into your family? I want you to just, through this week, as we go through the scripture, as we read and process what the Lord's saying to us, just process those three questions. What is good, Lord, and what needs a shift about the good that I see? What is pleasing to you and pleasing to me? And will you please help me shift anything in my mindset that I think is pleasure, but isn't pleasure according to you? And the third thing is, will you help me not to think of a necessity for perfection, not to live under a mandate of perfection, but to understand that as I submit to you and follow you, your perfect will is being accomplished in my life. And I think if we can come to the place where we answer those three questions, or at least talk about them, what we'll see is a lot of progress made in the way our mind is shifted. Okay? Be blessed and have a wonderful day.